Okay, so I want to review the trig functions that we've covered so far and also introduce you to 3 new trig functions. So here we have the unit circle, and right now I'm showing you sine and cosine, sine in green and cosine in red. The angle is 45 degrees or 0.79 radians shown in the upper left-hand corner. The values of sine and cosine are here. 0.71, 0.71. I can go ahead and change the angle. I can increase the angle or decrease the angle going around the unit circle, and the sine and cosine values change. So we have positive values here. Sine is increasing, cosine is decreasing. As we move into the second quadrant, sine is decreasing towards 0 and cosine is getting a larger negative value up to 1. And as we slide into the third quadrant, we see that the sine is growing negatively and the cosine is decreasing back to 0. And as we move into the fourth quadrant, the sine is decreasing back from a large negative to 0, and the cosine is increasing to 0. So that's sine and cosine. Remember, sine is just opposite over the hypotenuse, which is 1, and the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is 1. So let's slide it back to 45 degrees and look at tangent. So the tangent is defined as the opposite over the adjacent, so 0.71 over 0.71. So the tangent should be 1 here. And we've defined it as the slope of the angle coming from the origin and going to the unit circle. So we know the slope of this line is 1 right now. But there's another way to represent it on the unit circle, and I want to show you that. So if we go ahead and select tangent, we can see that it is also the distance from the intersection of the angle and the unit circle, a line tangent to the circle, and its distance to the x-axis. So you can see that distance is 1, the orange line. So if I go ahead and decrease the angle, the length of the orange line decreases. Right now it's at 0.73, so the slope of the angle right here is 0.73. I can go down to 0, so the tangent has a value of 0 when the angle is 0. As I increase, I see the tangent value increasing through 1 at 45 degrees. Above 1, that line increases its length. It's at now 3.73, so we know the slope of the angle is 3.73. As I approach 90 degrees, the length is growing and growing, 8.14, and much larger, 9.51. It's growing until eventually at 90 degrees it's parallel to the x-axis, so it's undefined. Tangent is undefined at 90 degrees or pi over 2. As I cross over into the second quadrant, the orange line appears again, and now it's negative. The slope of the line is negative, and the tangent value is negative 4.33. The slope of the line angle is 4.33 negative. So I decrease down towards pi or 180 degrees. That orange line is decreasing in size until it reaches 0 at 180 degrees or pi. If I move into the third quadrant, the orange line grows in length. The value of tangent is increasing. The slope is positive, so the length of this line is represented as a positive value. Grows and grows and grows until again it's undefined at 270 degrees. If I cross into the fourth quadrant, the tangent again is negative because we have a negative slope. And the length of the line right now is 3.08. And that will decrease until we reach 360 when it becomes 0 again. So let's swing back around all the way to the first quadrant. and bring it down to angle of 45. And we can see once again the tangent has a value of 1, the slope is 1. And I want to introduce you to our first new trig function, which is a reciprocal function. It's a reciprocal function meaning that the fraction is flipped. And so we're going to flip tangent to create cotangent. So rather than having the opposite over the adjacent, it will be the adjacent side over the opposite. And so right now the cotangent should have a value of 1, should be the same as the tangent because they are reciprocals of one another. 1 over 1 is equal to 1 over 1. So let's see where it appears on the unit circle. So there's the cotangent, the green line, coming from the point where the angle intersects the unit circle to where it intersects the y-axis. You can see it has a value of 1. If I decrease the angle, the tangent is decreasing, the cotangent is increasing. Again, I can find 1.43 by dividing 0.82, cosine value, by the sine value, 0.57. Or I could take 1 and divide it by 0.7, that's the tangent value, to get 1.43. As we move around the unit circle, you can see the cotangent will decrease in value as the tangent increases because they're reciprocals of one another. Here we are at 90 degrees. As I cross over 90 degrees, I can see the tangent value decreasing, negative, whereas the cotangent will be increasing, negative. As I move into the third quadrant, the tangent is growing positively. The cotangent will be decreasing because of its reciprocal nature, positive. And into the fourth quadrant, again, the tangent is quite large here, 7.12. The cotangent, therefore, will be small, 0.14. In each instance, it's negative. The cotangent and tangent are negative values. We see the slope of the line, the angle, is negative. And again, the orange line is decreasing in its length, and the cotangent line is increasing. So they work opposite one another, they're reciprocals. So let's slide back around to the first quadrant. We'll stop at 45 degrees. And talk about our next trig function. So if we've got a reciprocal function for the tangent, which was cotangent, we can have a reciprocal value for the sine. Remember, sine is this green line, and we call it the cosecant. Let me show you, if it's a reciprocal, it should be longer than 0.71. So let's see where it appears. It's the blue line. And you notice it has a value of 1.41, which is the reciprocal of 0.71. So 1 divided by 0.71 gives me 1.41. So let's go ahead and move the angle again. We can see that as I decrease the angle, sine decreases in value, but the cosecant increases in value. And vice versa, as the sine grows, the cosecant diminishes. Interesting thing happens at 90 degrees. At 90 degrees, they are equal. So if sine is 1, the reciprocal of 1 is 1. As I move into the second quadrant, you'll notice that the cosecant again grows and grows and grows as the sine decreases. As I move into the third quadrant, we see that the blue line is quite long, 4.81 now, because we have a value of sine of 0.21. Sine is negative, so cosecant will also be negative. Again, it 270, we can see the values are the same for cosecant and sine. They're -1 and -1. And as I move into the fourth quadrant, we can see that the sine is decreasing back towards 0. It's negative. The cosecant is growing larger and larger, larger and larger, negative. So again, a reciprocal function. Let's swing back around to the first quadrant and line up at 45 degrees. And we'll introduce our last reciprocal function, and that is secant. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. And there it is. It's the purple line. Starts at the origin, extends to the point where the tangent intersects the x-axis. Currently has a value of 1.41, which is the reciprocal of 0.71. So 1 divided by 0.71 is 1.41. Let's track the movement of secant. So if I decrease the angle, the secant value also decreases at 0. Cosine is 1, and so is the secant. As I increase the angle, cosine decreases, and the secant increases and increases and increases and increases. It continues to increase. As I pass through 90, I see the value for the secant becoming smaller. As the cosine value becomes larger negative, the secant becomes a smaller negative. At 180 degrees, the secant has a value of -1, and so does the cosine. They're the same. Swinging into the third quadrant, as I increase, once again, the cosine is negative 0.83, and the secant is -1.21, the reciprocal of -0.83. I'll continue to grow. You'll notice at 270 degrees, the cosine has a value of 0, and the secant is infinity. It's not defined. This is going to be a vertical asymptote on our graph, our secant graph. Sliding into the fourth quadrant, we can see that the red line, which is the cosine, and the purple line, which is the secant line, the red line is growing in length. The purple line is decreasing because they're reciprocals once again, all the way to 360 degrees. At 360 degrees, cosine is 1, and the secant is 1. Sliding back around to the first quadrant and 45 degrees, we can see the entire construction. And once again, we have the sine in green, the cosine in red, tangent in orange, cotangent in this green, kind of darker green. We've got our cosecant in this blue, and we have our secant in purple. So run through this a few times. Also look for a handout I put in your box that has a picture of this exact diagram. Good luck. Thanks.